a lot of, musicians were back in my day. It was like, oh, someone else would do that. I just want to write the music and perform and, and like party and have fun. Like, I don't want to, hang out with the girls, and I don't want to be having to, do all this. Someone else will do that. Right.
Yeah.
And yes, there has been times in history where somebody else does do that. But I just I think those days are done. Like, I think these days with social media, I mean, you have to know so much about everything, like if you really want to, do things properly. Like, for instance, there's this one fellow that I book, and he's an amazing piano player, like classical and contemporary, and younger, early 20s. And I remember I hired him for a virtual event actually a couple of years ago. And he wanted to basically, like become a recording artist and put out music and go on the road and, have a successful recording career. And I was like, well, are you on social media? Well, no, not really. I'm hoping that I can have someone help me with that. And I said, well, that's something that, unfortunately, these days, you really need to have a strong social media presence, right?
Welcome to the Vocal Lab. I'm Sarah Ramsey, and this show aims to pull back the curtain on the entertainment industry, where veterans give up-and-coming artists some of the information they wish they'd had when they were just starting out. Sort of a music industry primer, if you will. Today, we have Kelly Brock with us, and Kelly is the founder and director of VanHattan Entertainment Group. And she is also a BC-based singer, songwriter, and entertainer who has been on the Canadian music scene for over 25 years. Kelly sings with the iconic Vancouver Party Band, Dr. Strangelove, and is also a veteran on the Canadian country music scene as a recording artist. Kelly has released 4 independent CDs over the course of her recording career, and also won the BCCMA's, or British Columbia Country Music Association's, Lifetime Achievement Award for Best Female Vocalist in 2017. Kelly has produced, directed, and performed at thousands of corporate parties, festivals, charity functions, and large-scale sporting and concert events. Along with being a successful artist, performer, and businesswoman, Kelly is well respected by her peers. I can vouch for that, and is well known for being kind, good-natured, and a lot of fun to work with. I can vouch for that too. Thanks for joining me today, Kelly.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
This is going to be a lot of fun. So do you want to tell us your story briefly for, listeners who may not know who you are, a little about who you are, your journey in the biz, how you got where you are today?
Yeah, for sure. So my dad was a music teacher. So I had music, from a very young age in my household. We had instruments and pianos. And so he taught at Terry Fox High School. He did music 8 to 9, band 8 to 9 for probably 15 years, and then started to lose his hearing. So he actually had his degree in science. So he switched over to sciences at that point. But, it really had an impact on me as we would go and, over the years when we were little. So I have 3 younger sisters, and I remember being like, age range between like 4 and 10 years old. And we would go and sing at the high school Christmas concerts. My dad would always we'd be opening up the show or, doing singing a little Christmas carol, all dressed the same. And, so it kind of, he sort of threw me into it early, and I loved it. I was like, oh, this is great. So at a young age, that's kind of where it started. And then I always loved music. Like in my very first 45, that when we were younger, we'd get an allowance and we'd go down to Blaine and we'd go to Fred Meyer, and we would get like $2 each or something. And I would take my whole $2. And the very first 45 I bought was Prince's, I Want to Be Your Lover. And I was like, I don't know, like maybe 7 or 8 years old. And we had this crazy stereo in our living room, like the big sort of cabinet where you'd lift it up, and then you'd put, you'd have to plunk in the little 45
the center
thing, the centerpiece, and then put it on and then headphones, right? So I was like, I'd be in our living room and I played that song over and over and over, and I would dance and sing. And of course, there was no video back then. Like there's no, I mean, as far as I know, maybe there was like the big heavy video that you could take, but we didn't have a lot of money. My dad was a teacher. My mom was a homemaker. So, but I would perform in the living room, just and whoever was there watching, that's great. If I'm by myself. So kind of that sort of started my love of music. And then in grade 7 for Christmas, I asked for Dreamboat Annie Hearts album, and I got it. And I was just like, everyone was getting dolls and Barbies and this and that. I was so excited, and I learned every single word. Of course, back then they would list all the lyrics, and
yep.
I know to this day every single word of Dreamboat Annie, and it just that's where it started. I think just my love of singing and performing. And
I just have to laugh because the first record that I ever bought was AC/DC Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. So,
oh my gosh.
And I was awesome. 7. I saved up my allowance, and God bless my parents for even allowing that. Right. But, all hail musician parents, right? Yes, I went and bought AC/DC's Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. And the second record I bought was the soundtrack to Annie. So a rather varied musical.
Broad.
Yeah.
Broad musical taste. But yeah, no, you know what I mean? I think for most musicians, that's where it starts, right? Like everybody remembers their first record that they either got as a gift or they bought for themselves, or their first concert, right? Yeah. So my first concert, I really wanted to go, and this is kind of a sad story, but I was fully into Sean Cassidy when I was,
oh my God. I was going to marry Sean Cassidy.
Oh my gosh. Posters all over my room of Sean Cassidy. And I remember my dad, he would sit in this sort of lounger chair, and he was reading the Vancouver Sun newspaper, which every night he read that. And there's a huge ad, and it's like Sean Cassidy coming to the Pacific Coliseum. And he went, Kelly, and he knew that I love Sean Cassidy. Look at Sean Cassidy's coming. And I lost my freaking mind. I was just like, I was jumping around the living room and screaming and yelling. And then my mom's like, you're not going to Sean Cassidy. They smoke marijuana and do drugs there.
No. Dreams shattered.
I literally ran up to my bedroom and cried and cried. I'm like, why did you tell me, Dad? I wish you never even told me he was coming. Anyways, so I didn't get to go to Sean Cassidy, but then I did go to, so my very first concert I was in grade 8, and my mom's sister, she had a sister that was 10 years younger than her. Mm-hmm. So she would have been in her early 20s, I think, took me to go and see Jackson Browne. Wow. So that was my first concert. And the funny thing is, so my mom was like, okay, I'll trust Joanne. Well, and like we get in there and we sit down. The first thing she does is spark up a doobie. Like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, yeah, Mom, like, as if Sean Cassidy, there's going to be it's just going to be like little girls and their parents, right? So it's like, you let me go to Jackson Browne, where it's just a huge puff of like,
that's hilarious.
Pot smoke.
Yeah.
Which anyways, I didn't partake. I wasn't into that, but it was just like, I was like, this is so ironic. Anyways, Jackson Browne's a much cooler first concert. Than Sean Cassidy, right? So there you go. She saved me some embarrassment down the road. But yeah, I think as musicians and singers, we always, right? Like that's such pivotal. Those moments are so pivotal, right?
Yeah, they really are. Yeah. So here on the Vocal Lab, we sort of aim to shine a light on the industry through the lens of what I know now that I wish I'd known then. Right. So with that in mind, if you were starting your career over again, what would you do differently?
That's a good question. I mean, I think if you had asked me that question, pre-kids, pre-marriage, pre-family, I think I probably would have said, I wish I would have relocated to a bigger music center, like, at least Toronto, but because I had done numerous trips to Nashville and New York and LA and was songwriting with a bunch of like heavy cats and, and at one point had contemplated moving to New York, actually Pennsylvania, because there was a manager out there that wanted me to write with a band that he was managing called the Hooters at the time. And as it turns out, they ended up actually doing a project with Joan Osborne. So it's like, darn it, I could have been the Joan Osborne, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I chickened out. I just started working at the Roxy, finally making a living as a musician and a singer. And I was like, am I going to just throw that all away? And like, I was really torn. And then, I was concerned about, how am I going to make money? And I remember bringing that up to Steve and he was like, well, we'll just go and work at a shoe store. And like, I said, but I'm Canadian. Like I can't get a job. He said, you just work under the table. People pay you cash. And I was just like, I can't do that. Oh my God. Like I just, I was too sort of like wanting to follow the rules and not sort of, I was never really a rule breaker. So that kind of held me back a little bit. I wish I just would have just went, I'm just going to try it for like 6 months. But then I'm like, well, what if I lose my gig at the Roxy? And then, and I'm starting to get into doing more studio work and like voiceover and jingles. And like, I could, so I was torn between, do I want to stay in Vancouver and be like a professional musician making a living at it? Or do I want to follow this crazy dream that 1% of the population actually gets an opportunity to become a recording artist and have hit songs and have a tour with your band and all that kind of, and I did dream about all that sort of stuff. I did 4 CDs, pursuing that, as the ultimate end goal. But, but now being where I am today, I feel like everything just happened the way it was supposed to happen. Like you just even with just the last few years, how crazy social media has become and how these people that are very successful in our name, name recognition, how they just get like torn apart, like bullied and it's like, for me, it's like, I think that would have just been like too much for, I don't know how these, people do it and so then I always used to think, well, just a couple Canadian hits. That's all I want. Just a couple Canadian, and I'll just tour back and forth across Canada. Right. Yeah. And, but as it all worked out, I feel like it was meant to be. And I made the decisions that I made and I don't have any regrets where I'm at today. Yeah.
So maybe that answers the next question, which is what, if that's, what would you do differently? Which is everything and nothing. What did you do right in your career? What would you do the same all over again?
I think what I did right was the DIY aspect of my career that I followed, the do-it-yourself path, where I did everything from, having my little, napkin, writing down lyrics and starting there and then taking that to a songwriting partner or producer and creating the music and then taking that music and, putting it onto back in the day, cassette, or CD, or like Lost Strangos, we actually had like a vinyl record, an EP. So, taking all of that and doing the steps required to release it, like searching for a label that would distribute it across Canada and then building the website and, contacting media people to get some publicity and do some interviews, radio and TV, and then having the CD release party and then doing a little mini radio promotional mini tour. Like I did all of that and I did it myself. Like I had some help, I did have one girl that managed me somewhat kind of for I think it was the second record. Yeah, the second, Deland Reed helped me here and there, but most of the time, 90% of the time, I was on my own doing it myself. So that that kind of helped me with VanHattan because I just learned so much about the business and I made a lot of connections and it just made me, I taught myself to not be shy, to pick up the phone or to email somebody or, and I always would get a response, at least, 50% of the time. I mean, sometimes, of course, people would just completely ignore my emails or my phone calls, but, half the time people would respond and then you build that relationship and, the relationship building, learning how to do that and I think in any business, that's how you be successful is relationship building, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have no regrets in that. Although there are times when it was just like, oh my gosh, this is so much work, right? It's a lot of work. And there are times when it's like, I wish I could maybe relax a little bit more than I did, but I enjoyed it too. Like it was a passion. So, for me, it was like, I enjoyed every aspect of it for the most part.
Yeah. And you've worn a lot of hats in your career. So you've been an original artist, longtime member of like a really iconic dance band in the Vancouver area, and founded VanHattan Entertainment. You want to talk a little bit about the transition from working on the mic to working behind the scenes, putting together the shows?
Yeah,
I know that wasn't at the expense of working on the mic. I know you still do both, but that's it's a very different sort of skill set and focus.
It is for sure. And, being in Dr. Strangelove was helpful to transition me over to VanHattan because, I recall when we were at the Roxy for 14 years. And I remember, on numerous occasions after being in the band and being at the Roxy for like 10 plus years, I was like, okay, guys, we need to transition here. Like, we're not going to be here forever. Right. Like, we're in our 30s. Like we want to have a family at some point. So, and I didn't want the band to just fold, because every other band, with the exception of Dawn Patrol, which actually turned into the Odds, never, you know what I mean? Like they never actually, Joe's Garage and, and Cyril McCoy's, and they never got outside of the Roxy. Yeah. Right. And when those bands were finished at the Roxy, they were done. It was over, right? And I thought, Strangelove, such a, we have so much fun and it's such a great band. And I just thought it would be such a shame that after 14 years of honing our chops and really musically, just becoming so tight that once we were down at the Roxy, then that's it. It disappears. So, I remember saying, we got to get some promo. We got to do the picture. We got to get a video. And we got to get our bio together. And so I really did spearhead that. I think everybody else was like, oh my God, Kelly's bugging us again to go and get our pictures, right? Like I was and even today still, I'm like, okay, guys, we got our Christmas card. We got to go and get, go into the photo booth at our corporate event and get like a really fun picture with some hats and glasses and this and that. Everybody's rolling their eyes at me going, oh my God, Kelly's bugging us again to do this. So it hasn't stopped, it hasn't changed, right? But they see the value in it, obviously, because they do, they get up and they do it. But so, that was a great transitional period for us. And then, so I think that helped with, and then moving from Dr. Strangelove into VanHattan, it was just a very seamless, easy transition because basically what I did was, what we did for Strangelove is I took that same template and did it for other bands, right? Oh, and that's sort of how I laid out, like the website's laid out in a very simple manner. It's just picture, bio, video clips, right? And, it's it's been so fun. Like just, I like the creative aspect of things. So being able to see what people have done with their own, band business per se, or whether they're a solo act or a DJ or doing pianos or whatever, like it's great to take what they've done and then sort of, look at, my past experience and go, you know what? This picture is going to sell this band the best. Like I just, instinctively, I just know, like, or a video, like you know what? this video I feel like it's not going to really get the attention.
Right.
Or you'll get the gig. I don't think it's going to land you the gig. Let's, and then I'll search. So I do quite a bit of research on every act that I work with. And I've got over 300 acts on the website now. So it's like, yeah. So, but it'll be 10 years this year. And in the fall, it'll be 10 years that VanHattan's been around, which is crazy.
That's a huge accomplishment, Cal.
It is. And I didn't really start the business. I just kind of started it so Kayla was 5 years old. Because she's 50 now. So I just wanted something because she was going to be starting at school, right? Mm-hmm. And I just wanted like a part-time job from home where I could drop her off at school, come home, work, and then go pick her up at, 2:30, 3 o'clock. And then, and then spend time with her for the rest of the afternoon. Yep. And I thought, how am I going to do that? Because a lot of her friends were in daycare from like, 7 o'clock, they get dropped off and then they get shipped to the school, and then daycare people pick them up at, 2:33 and then they're there till like 5 or 6. And I was like, I don't want to do that. Like I've got I've only child. I want to spend as much time with her as I can. And sometimes you just have to do that. I mean, and no,
of course. No shade.
No shade to people that have to do that. But for me, I was like, how can I make this work where I can just work from home?
Yeah.
So it was like a part-time home-based business.
Yeah.
That turned out like it's turned into a little bit of a monster, to be honest with you. Like it's like sometimes I'm just like, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? Like it's a lot now. And so I'm trying to find, like, my biggest challenge at the moment is just trying to find people that can help me and that can take on some of the work, because there's so much involved, right?
So now you're building out your business, huh?
So now I'm building it out, and I've had to because I just couldn't keep up. Like, they do say at some point your business starts to grow, and if you don't have a plan in place for the growth, then that's when a lot of businesses fail. They shut down and it becomes too overwhelming. And there's been times, like, in a way, the pandemic, although it was terrible, like 2019 was a crazy year. And I just remember thinking, I can't keep up with this amount of work that's coming through my door. And so the pandemic kind of helped me to just step back and take a look at the whole picture and go, what do I need to do to continue this, right? And then I got a grant, although it was really scary, like especially after a year into the pandemic, going, okay, what the hell is happening? Are we in a whole new, brave new world? Like, what's going on? Right. But eventually we've landed on our feet now and everything's pretty much back to normal. But, in 2021, they were giving out grants for businesses. Yeah. To basically help them sort of pivot, right? Yeah. And even during like 2020 and 2021, I was still busy, either pivoting and trying to figure out how can we do like online, events and concerts and we were lucky. We didn't get hit too bad in Vancouver, right? Like it was in BC, it wasn't like some of the other places, right? Like Ontario and of course the States, it was a nightmare. But yeah, so there were still things happening, like the municipality community events outdoors were still happening. Yeah. Right. And I, have kind of built out my business in that area as well. All ages festivals, that are, really fun to do. And so thankfully that part of the business was still happening for the most part, right? But yeah, no, it's been an interesting 10-year ride. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. So you want to talk a little bit about what kind of skills you need in order to work on the management side, and sort of specifically what you're doing. Are you booking rooms or putting together shows? What does that look like? And what skills are you utilizing for those?
Right. So I kind of, when I started the business, and I still am sort of in that mindset, whatever comes through the door, I'll try and make it work. Right.
Right.
I'm trying to get out of that a little bit because it's just been so busy. But, so I've got, regular, bookings that I do at hotels and golf courses. And then I do corporate events, where sometimes I'll just provide like a DJ or a dance band. And then other clients want me to actually, help them produce and create, curate, a variety of entertainment, which is to me like the fun, creative part of the business that I really like. It's a lot of work and it's stressful, but it is the most rewarding. And, being a creative person, that's, just doing the straight booking can get just a little bit, I need to feed my creative soul.
Yeah,
so that's where that really helps. And then of course the municipalities is another, doing the outdoor, like being able to bring, Kayla and her friends or her cousins to these different events, right? These Fun Canada Day events. And so, that's another element. And then the casinos, I've done a few things with them as well, and it's just, it's all over the map. There's not really, and I think that's where I've gotten into a little bit of trouble. the only thing, and then there's weddings too, but I don't actively pursue that market because there's so many people going after that market. It's highly competitive, right?
Yep.
So, and it is a lot of work. I mean, it's like, you're dealing with somebody's once in a lifetime event, and if you mess it up, they're going to let you know about it, right? So it's just a lot more stress, a lot more emails and phone calls and hand holding, and and I don't mind doing that every once in a while if it's the right client, but it's kind of not really. It's not, like Rob, for instance, from Side One, like that has been their market, right? That's
absolutely,
where they've really focused, and other, wedding planners and booking agencies have also really gone after that market in a big way. But I prefer the corporate market first, just because, usually budgets are really good, and there is more room for creative input and just creative ideas, right? Like coming up with ideas and going, hey, what do you think about this? And then fleshing that out. And then the hotels are nice because it's, or even the Hard Rock, it's nice to have that because then I can send people, if they're like, oh, I'd like to see Dr. Strangelove, like how, just to get a sense of, so I go, oh, they're playing here, so go check them out, right? And then the skill set for that, that's required. I mean, like I said, I think starting with my own original, doing my own original CDs and that is really where I developed my skill set to do all those things in the business. And where I really struggled was the bookkeeping. And, and like the contracting, do I have like enough, like the reading of contracts? Oh my gosh. Like it's like, when you're booking, I've booked major recording artists before and you're getting a contract from, a huge booking agency in Nashville or LA. And you're like, and it's a 20-page contract. And like, and I mean, I do have lawyers that I have. If I'm really stuck, I'll like go, can you please explain this clause to me? Like, I don't get it. Right now, though, after years of doing that, I can just scan through it myself. And I know, okay, and you can strike things that you don't necessarily agree with, or you can negotiate on stuff. And so it's like, that's the one thing about the business where I was kind of green,
and it's a big learning curve.
It's a huge learning curve. And then the bookkeeping, like, I just got onto QuickBooks a couple years ago, and it's just like, it's like I'm pulling my hair out, just like how do I do this, right? And Cam's like, Google it on YouTube. You got to. So YouTube's been my friend for but it's time consuming. So like something that would take like someone that's actually gone to school to be an accountant or a bookkeeper, they would figure it out in 2 minutes. That takes me an hour, right? Yeah. And so, not the best use of my time.
Maybe that's one of those places where you need to be building out laterally, is just hiring a bookkeeper.
Yes. I did do that actually during the pandemic. That was one thing where I'm like, I am not moving forward with this business until I get a bookkeeper. But then bookkeepers are hard to find, and I've gone through a couple, because it's, and so I think I've landed on somebody who has got the background and the experience to be able to handle, because it's a strange business. Like it
is. And bookkeepers for music-based businesses. Yeah. It's a very specific niche.
It's very niche. Yeah.
So all y'all listening, go become a bookkeeper for music-based businesses, because there's not enough.
There's not enough. I totally agree. So specific. Doing it I did it by myself for 8 years. I just had an Excel spreadsheet that my husband Cam, put together for me. And it was so time consuming. Yeah. Like I wasted so much time just figuring out the bookkeeping end of my business when I could have been doing, like, where I really excel is relationship building and communications and sales, right? And that's where, moving forward, the 10-year mark here, that's where I want to focus my time and energy I'm a people person. I love people. I love meeting and connecting with people and talking about, music and entertainment. And so that's where my passion in this business lies. Bookkeeping and contracts. And it's just it just makes my eyes glaze over. Right. But it has to be done. Right. It's important.
Well, and there's so much, in the podcast that I listen to about business and some of the thought leaders out there and that kind of thing, there's so much moving instead of what we were probably taught in school, which is you have to get good at everything. Like those things that you're not good at, like for me, that was math class. Those things that you're not good at, you have to work your ass off and get better at it and better at it. And now the thought process, I mean, maybe not so much for kids in school who do have to learn a variety of school skills, but for adults in a business setting, what you should be doing is sitting in your magic, sitting in your strength, and outsourcing the things that you're not good at to people for whom that is their magic, that is their strength. And then everybody's working in their best place, bringing the best magic to the business.
I agree. Unfortunately, though, when you're starting a small business,
there ain't no money.
There ain't no money, and you got to do it yourself, right? Yeah. And it is good to kind of have the basics, know what the basics are, because if I need to go and look at something that a bookkeeper's doing, with some past bookkeepers, it's been there's mistakes made, and so I need to know what I'm doing to go and fix those, right?
Absolutely, and you need to know enough to at least understand. Like if they're going to give you a profit and loss statement or a balance sheet or whatever, you need to know enough to read those and understand what they mean. So you do have to have some business skills.
You have to have the basics down for sure. If you're going to start a business, and even if you're a musician wanting to become a recording artist, right?
That is a piece that I think does not get talked about enough, is that, and it's one that I actually want to do a whole episode on down the road is the fact that as musicians, we are in fact running our own businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And very few musicians approach it that way.
Right.
And I think that it does not do us any favors to miss that mark.
I agree. And I think a lot of, musicians were back in my day. It was like, oh, someone else would do that. I just want to write the music and perform and, and like party and have fun. Like, I don't want to, hang out with the girls, and I don't want to be having to, do all this. Someone else will do that. Right.
Yeah.
And yes, there has been times in history where somebody else does do that. But I just I think those days are done. Like, I think these days with social media, you have to know so much about everything.
Yeah.
Like if you really want to, do things properly. Like, for instance, there's this one fellow that I book, and he's an amazing piano player, like classical and contemporary, and younger, early 20s. And I remember I hired him for a virtual event actually a couple of years ago. And he wanted to basically, like become a recording artist and put out music and go on the road and, have a successful recording career. And I was like, well, are you on social media? Well, no, not really. I'm hoping that I can have someone help me with that. And I said, well, that's something that unfortunately these days you really need to have a strong social media presence, right? So I guess he took those words to heart, because now he's got a massive TikTok,
good for him,
site where he does these piano videos, and he came up with a really unique angle. Yeah. And I hopefully that will help him, take it to the next level. You never know in this business, but
you don't, but I can tell you from the words of, label president. I had Jonathan Simpkin on the show, and he said that's like the number one thing to even get the label to look at you is to build your own following. First, you need to kind of show the label that you have. It's like proof of concept. You're bringing proof of concept to the label. So that piece of establishing your credibility on social media matters to the label if that's your goal.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and I remember when I was like a recording artist myself, just trying to figure out, like, it always just seemed like, what is the key? What's the key to get in the door? Right. And I remember I would read autobiographies of musicians, like constantly and every person's story was different. Like, not one was the same. Like, how did they reach their crazy level of success? Right. Shania Twain and David Foster. And, and then I remember reading Michael Bublé's managers. I don't think he's written his own autobiography at this point, but his manager had written a book about him. And there was this was at the point where David Foster was possibly interested in getting involved. And so they flew down to LA and they did like a showcase. And did you read that book? I have not. No. It's really a really good read. And so they had, David Foster was there and a couple other, I think Burt Bacharach, a couple of like heavy cats. And they loved what he did. And then they basically, sat him down and said, hey, we would love to sign you, but you're going to have to raise $1 million or maybe it was $500,000 or something crazy. Right. So you're going to have to go back home and we'll do a record for you, but you have to pay us $1 million. Like we need. And so basically, like that to me would be like, most people, 99% of people would be like, well, I guess my career's done. Yeah. That's like, some heavy cheddar. How am I going to raise that? And they did, they went to they went to some friends and family and I don't know, they somehow, and then they went back to Dave Foster and they said, we got did a car wash, lemonade stand. Right. Whatever they needed, and they somehow managed to raise the funds. And he just went, and Foster was like, okay, you don't need to pay me. I just wanted to see like how serious you were. Wow. And then signed him to the label and did his record. Wow. So so it's like, and that was like, okay, so how many musicians know how to go and raise capital for themselves? Not very many, right? Yep. I mean, he had his manager helping him. She was a retired, I can't remember her name escapes me, but retired gal who obviously like believed in him more than anything. And, obviously she helped him find the funds as well, family members and what have you. But, so it's kind of one of those things, like every story is different. But the easiest thing I think musicians can do is try and build a social media following. You don't have to go on the road to do that. You can do that, out of the comfort of your home. From your bedroom, right? Yeah. You just have to have some kind of an angle of talent, of course, and, some great songs and, I mean, like Bieber is a prime example of, his mom, like every day, another autobiography I read, would go home after school every day and just 4 or 5 hours a day, work on the YouTube, just building up his YouTube numbers and connecting with people. And if it wasn't for her, if she hadn't done that, he would probably, be like a local Ontario guy singing in a dance band or, who knows, right? So you have to basically show your commitment, or you have to have some people around you. Like that's the other thing that's, I think was always challenging for me. I just never had the right person that, whether it be a family member, it's almost someone that just believes in you undeniably, right? Yeah. And I think most people don't have that, right? So then you're doing it yourself, or you're, trying to find help here and there. Or you have something just so magical that it can't be denied, right? Yeah. Like a Nirvana or something, right? Like there's just certain bands where you just go, okay, this is undeniable. Like, but yeah, so it's a funny business, and
there is. Yeah.
But the thing I think what I would want to really impress upon like young people out there is you don't have to become a star. Like, I think that's always the ultimate goal when you're starting out, right? Yeah. But there's so many other things that you can do. You can make a living. You can be involved in the music business and make a really good living at it and have lots of fun and enjoyment come from it without getting that, that elusive record deal and becoming a huge star. It's, and so I think that unless that's your lot in life, look at the other angles as well, because you don't have to just completely quit your dream and go work 9 to 5 somewhere.
There's some other places where that connection exists within the music industry.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really try to impress upon that with, young, vulnerable hearts that get broken easily in this music business. You know what I mean? You can still do it. You can still have so much fun and really enjoy it. And you don't have to make, a gazillion dollars or become, crazy famous. Like, you can, so that's important, because I think it's important that, people that's their passion and that's their dream. You don't want to kill that. Like, don't kill the dream. Like, keep it alive, there's just, you just got to find another pathway, and maybe lower your expectations a little bit. Right.
Well, and I think it's interesting too, like, you were saying, looking back from where you are now with a husband and a family and all of that, the fact that those dreams that you had when you were maybe in your 20s didn't come true in the way that you saw them at the time is not a regret. Right? You feel like everything worked out the way it should. I feel the same way. I wanted to be a star. And I look back now, again, family, all of those things from my perspective now, not only am I okay with the fact that it didn't happen, I'm grateful that it didn't happen. I would not have wanted to live the life that went along with all of that, the loss of privacy, the pressure, all of those pieces. I far prefer the way I get to engage with music now. I get to sort of enjoy the performance level that I have. I get to teach, which is something I've discovered over the years, I've discovered I have a huge passion for. I get to engage with music in a different way without the part of it that I can see in hindsight that I think I would have hated.
Yes. Agreed.
So
yeah, I agree. And I mean, you don't know until you're there, I suppose.
Of course.
Right. Like, I mean, I don't know how your brother feels about, like, does he feel, I should have gone in a different path I don't
know. I don't want to speak to him. It's not a question I've ever asked him directly, frankly. There are parts of the celebrity aspect that goes along with the job that he does at the level he does it that are not awesome, but I think they're not awesome for anybody who does it.
Right.
And I think they're different in this day and age than they were 20 or 30 years ago.
Definitely.
I'm hedging my bets a little bit because it's quite honestly not a question I've ever asked him.
Right.
I don't know.
And so to put that like on you and I, we don't really know like how we would, you know what I mean? It's hard to say. I mean, I think I would agree with you that with the social media, like, mudslinging and all the terrible things that people say and the bullying and the death threats, it's like, it's terrible what's happening out there. I would hate to be, like subjecting myself to that. And these celebrities not all, I mean, it is more of a celebrity, like an American celebrity thing, I think, where they get the most mud hurled at them. It's not so bad, I don't think, with Canadian artists, but there's still an element there, right? That you have to contend with. And, whereas with 20 years ago, it would just be somebody writing you a letter and mailing it to the record company, right? And then maybe you would see it, maybe you wouldn't, right? So now you get to see all the crap that, some disturbed individual, feels like they have the right to, throw at you. It's like everyone has a right to their opinion on what you're doing musically and or just how you live your life. But it's like, it's like, whereas with, people like you and I, we can just like block, or we can, they'll do that too, but we can be private, we can take what we're doing and just keep it among our, our friend and family and close associates group. Right. Whereas with, when you're a public person, it's like, that's what you sign up for, Yeah. Right. Or you think about the paparazzi, like Britney Spears and all these people that just have to like their lives have been kind of ruined almost, like.
That's the part I look at and I go, as much as that's what I thought I wanted when I was younger.
Yeah.
And I look at that in hindsight now and I don't regret a single piece of not having achieved that.
No, there's other ways to make money.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's other ways to have a fun, exciting musical life without having to subject yourself to that, right?
Yeah. Thanks for joining us today. That was actually just part 1 of our interview. And I would love it if you come on back Thursday to catch part 2. Can't wait to see you then.